So, boss, with the dust settling on Tuesday night's defeat to Bradford, for you, what was the most disappointing aspect of the night?
The fact that we got beat, simply. But I think obviously the defeat when you're on a poor run of form obviously hits home even harder. But like I said after the game, it was we felt there was a positive response from the players and obviously the staff included in that, and albeit we didn't create a huge amount of chances, we felt we had opportunities to create chances, a little bit contradictory as that may sound, but we feel as though the margins for us at the moment are not particularly far away from us winning and winning a run of games, not just when you haven't won for a few weeks, you start to think when we're going to win that next game. But we feel as though our performances, like I say, collectively, that's the most important thing. Is it's not just me trying to cover up or say the right things. Collectively, we believe it as staff, and then for me, the really important part is that the players do, and they're still confident, and they feel that we're not too far away.
You mentioned there about lack of chances created. Obviously, just 1 goal in 6 games for Orient. As a coaching staff, obviously that's a massive area of concern for you. But how do you go about addressing that to make sure the O's are firing again?
Well, it's working on it, which is an easy term to use. But I think to clear that up for people, it's about a number of different angles, really. I don't know if I've said this publicly or not, but we were conscious going back after the Forest Green and Bolton defeats that when the games are marginal and we've not been the better team by a mile or the worst team by a mile, that we needed to try to find some consistency and grind out a draw rather than getting beat, which I think was fair to say that at the start of the season and through most of the season we've either been good and win and not so good and lose. So we were very conscious that as a group, and we discussed it, and we've looked at ways in which we could work to make sure that if we're not having a great game, this is what we go to, this is how we become difficult to break down, and we get a point out of a game rather than nothing. And then obviously what that's done is that's impacted us in terms of what we do or don't do at the other end. So I think, again, just to answer your question now, is that we don't get the chance out on the grass to do it a great deal because we're playing so often. But it's about a mindset from me to the players and the staff to the players to express the freedom to go and put a cross in a box, take a shot, whatever the particular moment looks like, to make a run, a more aggressive run, to get into rather than getting into the box, to get into the 6-yard box, or to make the far post when ordinarily you might wait for it to be cut back. I'm painting out some little scenarios. So it's about us identifying moments where we've looked like a threat, which at the weekend we didn't get the result that we wanted, but we had numerous occasions where we got into good positions and put crosses across the box. So at the moment it's about us trying to paint the pictures to the players of areas that we do get into, areas we try to get into, and then the conviction to go and score and therefore win the game. So hopefully that gives people a bit of clarity as to the way in which we're trying to address that balance for me, which is really important.
Are you concerned about any individual performances at the moment?
Not really, no. I mean, obviously, I think if you sat down with each individual player, which we do after every game, and there'll be areas in which you say you could have done this better. This is what I need from you. These are the types of chances that we expect you to create. This is what we think you can do better defensively, dependent obviously on the individual. So I don't think there's anyone there that's glaringly having a nightmare. But I think it's small margins. And again, taking it back to how the players have felt about it and the response that we've got from the lads, because ultimately it's them that's out on the pitch and they're the ones that are having to feel it. And if they came to me and said, we're finding this difficult, we feel like we're miles off of it in games, then I would look to address a lot more. But as a group, collectively, but like I say, for the lads who are out there, we feel as though we're in a confident place considering our run of results, and that we're not far away from turning it around. So it's about a focus and then narrowing up those little margins where we are or we aren't quite hitting in order to to turn a draw into a win, and for me really last night turn what should have been obviously what was a defeat into what should have been a draw, and albeit without any real clear cut chances, turning those moments in our favour to make sure that we come away with a win.
Obviously, touching on form there, the past 6 games leaves Dorian at the bottom of the form table in the league. I guess to aim for the playoffs this season, that quite obviously goes without saying, but there does need to be a big upturn in form.
Of course, but I think it's trying to look at what the whole process looks like. So, we don't take our eyes off of what that looks like. We believed a week ago that 10 wins and a couple of draws would get us very, very close to being in the playoffs. That hasn't changed, and my message to the players this morning that the only thing that has changed from that is we've got one less game to achieve that in, So that's disappointing. But we do feel as though we're capable of going on a very good run that gives us an opportunity to push close. I think we've ended up looking at the playoffs as an achievement, a realistic achievement, because of the way the first part of the season went for us. We found ourselves in the playoffs, which, to be honest, was it something that was really discussed as a group? Not really. At the start of the season, we talked about improvement, getting better. That we felt if we did really, really well that we could get close to that, and we still feel that as a group. But you have to be realistic and say that our form hasn't been at that level in recent weeks. So we have to address that run of poor form, poor results. I think for me, it's again a little bit reflective of where we've been at times throughout the season, which is something that we've tried to address. And I can't be any more clearer and honest and straight with people than to say what we tried to do to address the way that our results were going throughout the season. Our recent form has been poor. Our run of form, which we normally calculate over a 10-game period, so it would be so far we're in a 9-game run on that in terms of how we've been managing that throughout the season with cup games, etc. And our recent run has been 3 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses, and it's the more recent form that is an issue and something that has to be addressed. But again, it sort of comes back to that very similar point throughout, that we're conscious of where we are at on that front, and we're doing everything that we can possibly do to make sure that we turn it back the other way.
Yeah, you talk about an upturn in form in the league, and we see it quite often. Teams will go on runs where they'll put a few wins together and see themselves dart at the table. Don't need to look much further than this Saturday's opponents, Tranmere Rovers, for that. Without
doubt, yeah. I thought it was when I say a poor team, that's not a criticism of obviously where they're at now and the people and the players that are in that setup now, but we played them and that they were poor on the night, and we felt we were quite comfortable, albeit it was a narrow win, but we felt we were quite comfortable coming away from that one. But on the bus on the way home, we had some discussions as a group of staff, and as much as they had a bad night, that night, I felt that they've got a good squad of players, and if they had which looked like there was going to be a new manager coming in at any time, if they had someone that could come in and galvanise that and add a little bit of something to it that they could really kick on. I don't think anyone really expected them to turn it around in the manner that they have done, but it's a very good squad. They've got some very, very good players, an experienced manager, good experienced manager, not just someone that has done it. He's good at what he does. Got a lot of respect for him, so we know it's going to be a tough game like they all are. And I think when you talk about runs of form, when you look for it this season, there's been teams that have got off to a flyer, a Newport, for example, and go for a bad patch, and your tough patches during this period can seem to be so out of the ordinary. Different teams get caught out at different times, and different teams open up and go on a 4, 5, 6 game winning streak. So I think it's something that has to be looked upon, but it is our first port of call. It's going to be tough. But like I said, we go into every game confident that win's going to come at the weekend.
In terms of selection, we know Hector Cipriani returns from suspension. Is he close to pushing for a start?
He's very close. I think it's a weird one with Hec, because obviously he's been without, not only has he been suspended for 3 games, but he's been without football for an incredibly long period of time, considering it was a 3-game ban. So he'll come straight back into the squad. And then we'll have to weigh up what injuries look like, what people's legs are looking like after after 2 games this week, and whether he gets that opportunity to come straight back in or not, we'll make that decision before the weekend. Obviously, once we know what everybody else looks like.
And you've spoken about Craig Clay numerous times, and rewind a few weeks ago, and it might have looked a bit more worse than it was. But what's the latest update?
Yeah, we're really pleased. I would probably group Craig Clay and Sam Ling in a very similar boat, that we felt that we were going to miss them for a lengthy period of time. But actually, we probably thought that Sam would be back because Craig's looked so severe, but Craig is improving every day. Craig, you have to manage Craig because he's so keen. He will do anything he can to play, to be out there, to help, to do the right thing for himself as a footballer, but to make sure that he's fully committed to helping his team, his teammates and the squad. So I have to keep going to the physio before going to Craig, because he'll tell me that he's right as rain and he can play, which is what I love about him. But at the same time, I've probably got to help him manage that. So we'll see how that one looks before the weekend, once we can push him a little bit further. And I think, like I say, to touch on with Sam as well, is that he's improved steadily. I'm not sure if he's quite as close as Craigie, but again, we'll have to see in terms of what his capabilities are for the weekend.